Hey everybody, welcome to Radical Books and Activists. I'm your host, Jesus Estrada, with Kitty de la Sombra, my co-host. Today we have the pleasure and honor of having Jesus Rodriguez, who is going to talk about his international press. I don't want to pronounce it because I'm going to butcher it. And Jesus has done some of the most amazing work covering politics, not just in Venezuela, but struggles in Puerto Rico. We've been very intrigued by, including myself, and I'm from Chicago. We have comrades in Detroit who are really uplift his work. And actually, that's how I found out where to Patreon you. So we're going to have to tell people about that so they can Patreon you as well. Jesus, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you for the invitation, Jesus.
My
We are
pleasure.
we are almost tocayos. Uh, um, yes, I'm Jesus Rodriguez, and I'm the editor and founder of Orinoco Tribune. Before being in Orinoco Tribune, and before having coming with the idea of doing something uh, mm, about informing outside Venezuela, what is happening here in English for English speaking audiences. I work for several years, for almost 12 years, as Consul General of Venezuela in Chicago. And before that, I worked in the Venezuelan government, even before Chavez got in power. And what else? I also was part of a collective known Porrea.org. It was a very important Chavista website in Venezuela. It is still active, but right now their editorial line is more close to the right than to the left. But anyway, that also gave me some experience in dealing with media and realizing how important it is to communicate, to let other people know about things that are happening around you.
Right.
Hi, Misael.
One of the
Hi.
things you said without knowing you and reading some of your articles is that, well, the ruling class controls the media, but we are so woefully misinformed about what's happening in Venezuela. And not just there, what's happening in North Korea and what's happening in other parts of the world, that anytime there's a country or a government that remotely opposes capitalism, we don't get the correct information. So I think it's fascinating that you've been there not just with the Chavista government, but prior to, so you can compare, right? So yeah, please continue. And by the way, Misael Juarez has joined us. He's the other co-host. Um, and we're here with Jesus Rodriguez from
Thank you,
Orinoco
Misael.
Tribune.
Yeah.
So basically, is what you were saying is very true. You don't, in the case of Venezuela, for example, you don't get too much information different to what mainstream media wants you to believe. And we, at this moment in human history, should know that mainstream media doesn't really want you to have accurate information, but what the oligarchy, the 1%, the elite wants you to think. So that's why I came up with the idea. We don't have too many options about informing people outside Venezuela in English language what's happening here. The only one similar project that has been for years working around Venezuela is Venezuela Analysis. They do a nice job, but it's VenezuelaAnalysis.com. They has been there like for, I don't know, like 15 years or something. But they are not as, I wanted to do something more immediate, more, up to the minute. And they sometimes like takes like 2 or 3 days to inform about what's happening in Venezuela. And being working in the United States for so many years, let me understand that people there, especially progressive people, sometimes were like in the dark, not knowing exactly what happened, unless they speak Spanish. So that's why I came up with the idea.
Well,
Jesus.
I think it's brilliant, and I know I told Kitty, but I have a big mouth. So maybe one thing we can address, because I know Venezuela nationals who are close friends of mine who came here, I would say in the 90s, who had nothing positive to say about Chavez or the projects that were being done. and we're just informing about the shortages, the food shortages, alleged repression against the youth. And I'm not saying that any government system is perfect, but I do think there was a lot of skewed perspective. I don't want to disrespect my friends, but I don't think we got the whole picture. So I was very hesitant
Absolutely.
to ever criticize Chavez, to ever criticize the government that followed afterward. Just like I don't feel comfortable criticizing other expressions of socialism because we don't have all the information. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if you can speak to that an hour later. And Kitty, I don't know if you have a question for Jesus or Misa, if you want to jump in.
Well, and one thing that I was wondering, I think that you probably have an easier time figuring out where there's news because if you worked for the government, you can tell when they're giving essentially the company line and when they're not. So do you think that you've had the chance to get news out that maybe even the other on the moment presses haven't?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with the Jesus comment. Jesus comment first. You have a lot of Venezuelans and Latinos in general in the U.S. that are, uh, corrupted with the anti-communist propaganda, and that happened, with all the countries, but of course, to the US, a big chunk of the right-wing escualidos, as we call it here, Venezuelans, moved to the US or to Spain. Those are the places where more of the right-winger Venezuelans are living right now, especially in recent years. From 2015, when the economic situation start getting worse in Venezuela. So you might have a bunch of those guys as friends, Jesus, and I don't envy you. I know what you're talking about. I was consul there, so I had to deal with them all the time. And the only thing that you you can do is to try to present them with some facts, and contrast the lies that they usually repeat from what they hear on mainstream media. But basically, uh, as you say, no country is perfect. And sometimes in each country you will have a lot. You will have some human right abuses or excesses or police repression or things like that. But saying that Venezuela under Maduro or under Chavez are against human rights as a systemic approach towards the people or anti-democratic is a big lie. Is an absolutely big lie. We if you compare Venezuela with other Latin American countries, we should be in the first level of respect towards human rights and democracy. But because we talk about socialism, because we don't bend to U.S. Dictates. We are put, of course, as the villains for mainstream media, for Washington, the White House, and the guys in Europe also. So that's one thing. The other thing is like, what you say, Kitty, about being a public servant, a public official for several years. So I don't see that's like that. I believe that. There are a lot of public officials that don't have a clue about how to
Well, I mean,
read how to read between lines. You know what I mean?
what
Uh,
I think it's a good thing in journalism to have experience. Yeah. Do you
yes,
think
yes,
that
but but I believe that that's important, because especially because you know how things operate in the background. That gives you an advantage towards other people. But even though there are a lot of people that have those qualities because they had some, bureaucratic experience, uh, I believe that to communicate, you need to have like this capacity to read between lines, and to detect the right words, the right sentences, paragraph, and to identify where the enemy is targeting, is pointing their
For sure.
guns. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's something that I believe is something that you developed, or that you are born with that thing. I don't know. In my case, I was like an avid reader of news since I was 12. My father was an avid reader of newspapers, and I believe that to imitate him, I always sat, especially on weekends, next to him, reading newspapers, especially the international part of the newspapers. And he told me to identify, I'm talking about the 80s, early 80s, and they told me, he told me to identify. I mean, he told me, listen, this news piece is from TASS, from Russia. So, and this one is from Presa Latina, and listen, this one is from UPI, or this one is from AP. Those are they are gonna sell you another, through another vision of a particular reality. So it's gonna be better for you if you contrast those positions. So in that sense, I believe that what you say is in part true, in terms of, as I already said, having some experience in the bureaucracy helps you a little bit understanding how things operate, but also you need to have this sense of, I don't know how to say it.
I think
Uh,
your audience, I get you. I have a PhD in rhetoric, and I've had this stream really to educate people and bring them to a revolutionary process, which is not.
you got disconnected, Jesus. Yes,
Well,
maybe it's
yeah,
the Wi-Fi
I
there.
think she did just for a minute. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna
They even
ask.
budge when they're
Oh,
personally
there she
affected,
goes.
and I've never seen such a thing. To me, like what?
Listen,
But
Jesus,
you
you
know,
got disconnected for
oh,
5 seconds.
apologize. That I was saying that when people are entrenched in their belief systems, even when they're personally
I'm not listening here. There's a problem there with the Wi-Fi. No, no, Jesus, we cannot hear you well. There's a
No.
problem. The big one right now is worse.
Uh, let me say a few things.
Go ahead,
Go
Misael.
ahead.
Um, so what I understand, what you're saying with your work is that to analyze a situation, analyzing the times, analyzing where the guns are being pointed, you're you're
Yes,
trying to you're trying to basically um rechannel the attention of the people. You
we having the problem with Jesus
Yeah.
having the. Maybe we should try to mute her for a little bit. I'm gonna write something to her in the chat. Listen, Jesus, your audio
I think, yeah, I
is
think she
too
heard because she
choppy.
muted herself.
Yes,
Yeah, she just
can
muted herself.
you mute yourself? I'm writing that. Go ahead, Misael.
All right, so what I was thinking is that you're trying to fight for the people's attention. Where are you gonna put the X? X marks the spot, as they say, and you're trying to figure out if this country or this business negotiation is gonna that, let's say, two companies are conducting or two countries are doing, is gonna impact a third world country or a section of the people. Um, I think that it's very important to do
Are they
certain
also
things like
popping
that.
off?
I didn't get what your question properly, Misael.
Oh, okay. So you're trying base. That's because I got thrown off by whatever that was. Um, I'm trying to understand that's what you do. You're trying to basically fight for the people's attention to see where they should worry, where they should preoccupy themselves at, and figure out what's the best way to market a situation so people have interest.
Somehow,
And
yes, that's true. That's true.
can you?
Now I see it. Now I see it. Yes, I mean, at least what we try to do in Orinoco Tribune is to identify those pieces of information that we believe are relevant about things that are happening in Venezuela, but also in Latin America. Things that are relevant. We try to detect the things, the events that we believe are relevant for international audiences, especially audiences in the US, Canada, and Europe, that are so misinformed about what happened in Venezuela. So we try to rescue those events and translate it into a Chavista, anti-imperialist narrative and put it into English in order to fight the media warfare that we fight every day in a very unbalanced way between we, the independent media, and the multi-million dollar mainstream media. So it's not an easy job, but at least in our case, I believe that we has been uh, uh, gaining having some success, and I hope that of course, that people read us most and know about the work that we are doing in Orinoco Tribune more. But we are happy. We are happy. We have a big community of supporters and readers, and of course, we can always do better and improve also in our capacity of do a better work and things like that. I see you better now, Jesus.
Yes, so you're
Okay,
back.
I'm so sorry.
Don't
We're
worry.
definitely going to schedule because I think this is a conversation that merits a deep dive. But what I was going to say, you had mentioned that Venezuela is seen as a repressive country. But look at the United States and the state sanctioned violence. Look at the people of color that are in jail. Look at over 1 million people that had died from COVID. How does the United States not compare to the rest of the world? Because I call it fascism. And whether the politicians recognize they're in a fascist motion or not, they're still supporting it. Do you see what I'm saying? Why don't they stop
Yes.
the NRA, right? So I think it's very easy for the United States to point fingers or people who live here. Come on, take care of your own house first, And I've been saying that too in terms of the war that's currently happening. Take care of your poor people here in this country first. Take care of the students, was like in everywhere in the country, but here in Chicago it's very segregated. And one of the most fascist things they're doing is that they're cutting the budgets of public schools in the poorest black and brown communities. Why? Why is
Yeah.
that? And so I think there's a lot going on, not just here in the United States, but in other parts of the world that is basically a fascist motion. And you mentioned something, it's a little bit tangential, but you mentioned that a lot of Venezuelans go to Spain. But hasn't that been the historic process? Didn't people from El Salvador and other parts of the world, when they were in a revolution against the United States, didn't the fascists also get supported by Spain?
I mean, Spain is full of right wingers. I mean, especially since Franco times. So you have the power of the Catholic Church there, and they have a big, powerful ranches in Spain. I'm talking about Opus Dei. I'm talking about, I mean, those are the right wingers among the already right wing, Catholic hierarchy. So, and those are the ones that supported Franco, and keep supporting anything related to fascism, uh, um, supremacy, racism. I mean, those are the values that are embedded in capitalism at the end of the day. And those are the values of the US. And those are the values of most of the European countries. And you, I mean, you cannot be even though you are an, ant- a crazy anti-communist guy, you should realize that those are the values that move the North. I mean, along with money and making money in whatever way you can possibly make it. So, I mean, with those values, you are not going anywhere if you are thinking about the humanity as a whole. So uh, we are fighting against those things. Of course, there's a lot of people that are inoculated with the anti-communist propaganda and things like that, but you need to fight, even though you are fighting towards gigantic corporations that are full of experts, psychologists, communication specialists. I mean, they have everything they want in order to wash your brain. So the fight is not an easy one, but I believe that there's a lot of people, especially when the conditions, the material conditions of a country or a society are getting worse and worse. I mean, people start realizing, listen, I mean, this thing is not happening because the guys in China, in Shanghai, put a lockdown for 2 weeks, as they are trying to make you believe in recent days about what is happening in the economy, or because the Russians are very bad and they don't want to sell oil. Come on, I mean, you cannot be that stupid. I mean, you can be anti-communist, but you can, you have a little bit of brain to realize that whatever is happening in the north in terms of economic harsh is not is not the result of the guys in China putting a lockdown for 3 weeks in Shanghai, or that the Russians are too bad that they don't want to sell their oil or gas. I mean, you have to, I mean, and in those circumstances is when the work that we do, making communication, is more relevant, more important, because we need to get into those cracks, into those cracks in the narrative, in the mainstream narrative, in order to exploit them and make people see another way to analyze the reality. So that's part of the things that we try to do. Of course, we need to, I mean, we need more, more projects like Orinoco Tribune out there doing that kind of work, and not only in Venezuela, but in other countries. For us, it was very important to do the work in English, because we have plenty of websites and newspapers in Venezuela that do a lot of work in Spanish. But one of the problems that I detected while I was in the US was that what I already told you, that there's a lot of people in the dark and not knowing exactly what is happening, and only buying everything that they found on CNN, Fox, the New York Times, and Washington Post, or whatever.
Wow, it's a it's a very interesting thing, because what you're experiencing, I know it's also the same thing going on in other parts of the world. Same thing. Many people are fighting for information. Many people don't know how to fight for information. Many people don't have a clue how they're going to get their information for tomorrow. And some people are aware that the media is taking over the major channels, but already has. But I think, what are some solutions that people can have or can do, other than, well, what is a solution for this media thing? What do you suggest, or what have you studied that could be a possible solution for this media takeover, so people could have I guess, what they call a fair and balanced game?
It's not an easy one. It's not an easy solution. I mean, it's complicated. I mean, the best solution is having, I mean, I mean, one thing that I has been talked with friends in the U.S. and Canada in several occasions, that I have the chance to meet in person with them, is to try to create, for example, a poll of. We need financing. I mean, in Orinoco Tribune, we work with. I mean, in survival mode, basically, uh, uh, and. Uh, and we do it because we love what we do, but some people need to eat. You know what I mean? And for example, in countries like the US, Canada, or any other European country, you can create this crowdfunding, that you can use to finance independent media projects, that follow certain criteria in terms of being anti-imperialist or being whatever, being anti-capitalist or being anti-Zionist, anti-fascist, that kind of stuff, and and and. And that will be great if someone in the U.S. Managed to do something like that. And I believe that is pretty viable. I mean, you can just have to make connections, create a movement, and with that help, a lot of independent projects like Orinoco Tribune and many others might be more viable. That's one thing that I've been, discussing for several years. Thinking about the financial part, which is very important. But another important thing is how you do the work and how you also connect the work that you do as independent media with activism, with people on the streets. So that's a very that's a a hard thing to do. I mean, it's a complicated thing to do, but people can do it, and there are some organizations that try to do that work. So it's complicated, but I believe that is possible. So you need to work into the connecting the communication projects with the activist projects, because with that connection you will allow people, as you say, not knowing how to get information into getting the right information, for example.
Right.
And
When
at the
you
same time you will somehow connect them with the activism, with the grassroots movement, and that's also important to make things change.
you know what I noticed here in the US is that people who with different media sources from the alternative, también they also compete with each other. They also
That's
compete
true. That
for
happens.
how to pull the activists. They're competing for the activists. And I
That
noticed
happens.
that one even within the people, the grassroots, they're competing with each other. Sometimes they fight over each other. Here I noticed that in my
That
college days,
happens.
and I was just new to the game. I was like, "What's going on? Why are they saying?" I thought it was all the same, but it's not, because we understand that certain people are hijacked too. Some people are taken away by other, let's say, infiltration or ideas that doesn't really match the others. So how often does your
Orinoco.
Orinoco Tribune reach out to other tribunes, other papers, and say, hey, you know what, we need to establish some common goals because we're getting our asses whooped?
We
How
have
often
been
does that happen?
we have been trying to do that. It's not an easy thing to do. And as you say, I mean, and of course, you don't do those things in public because you don't want the enemy to know about the alliances that you are trying to build. But we, at least in Orinoco Tribune, we have organized several meetings with other uh, media projects like us. And in some instances, we have got connection, but in other instances, we notice what you are talking about. We notice that there's some organizations that are more thinking about themselves than about creating a movement that working collectively. So I believe that that's part of the things that you have to deal with when you come from a society where selfishness and individuality and competition are the main engines. You know what I mean? So I'm not trying to excuse them, but that's something that comes naturally when you grow up and when you live in a culture of competition, of individualism, and self, interest, and that happened. But we have been going back to your question. I mean, we have been doing that, and we have created some good alliances with organizations like Causa Chung News, for example, in Bolivia. They do an amazing job with the guys from Gray Zone, and now with the guys from Multipolarista, Ben Norton, Max Blumenthal. Those are guys that connected with us. I mean, that in our approach towards creating some sort of organization among ourselves, responded very well to our call. And there are other ones. I don't recall. I don't remember all the names, but there are other organizations. I'm just naming the ones that are might be most knowledgeable for you up there in the north. But those things happen, and I believe that eventually we can, go and create some sort of alliance. I mean, some people believe that being part of a movement or an organization of independent media means that you are going to lose your identity and things like that. I don't want to do that, but you need to have some strategies, because mainstream media, I'm pretty sure that they create their strategies, that they go to their sky clubs in Switzerland every year, and they have their meetings, and they just talk about, that this year we're going to go against this one and against this one, and we're going to promote this narrative and this other narrative. They do that, and they have
But
teams of
Jesus,
people doing that.
even before that, I don't know if you can hear me. I know my face isn't showing up. I was a disc jockey in the mid '90s, and Clearwater was buying up all the broadband on the radio. And so it left a lot of us independent radio stations floundering, and it was difficult even to keep independent presses available. Now with social media, now with the availability of YouTube and all these platforms, it's possible to get our message out more widely. And we see this in the way that, like, I wouldn't be able to connect with you like this in the past, to be quite honest. To be able to listen to the stories directly from people who are impacted, or to see videos or what have you. But we were talking about how Elon Musk has bought out Twitter, and Twitter's one of the platforms people think they're quote unquote political. But if they shut down Twitter, we'll go somewhere else, you know. And but I do agree with you. I actually find the opposite, that people are putting down their ideological differences and uniting because they see what's happening, whether they're socialists or communists or whatever. Um, I'm a case in point. I've been joining more socialist groups, uniting with them more. I wouldn't have done that 5 years ago, but we see what's happening. And look, I don't care what you call yourself, as long as you fight for people to have food, housing, education, a living wage, that we're in the same struggle. And yeah, so but I agree. So Jesus, I did have I don't know if Misa saw my private chat. What's Venezuela like now? I know we heard all these supposed things that were happening with food shortages and whatnot, but what's happening now that you see as progress?
Yeah. I mean, since 2015, uh, due to sanctions mainly, but also, to be frank, due to erratic economic decisions from the Maduro government at the beginning, we experienced a sharp economic crisis, that, especially between 2015 and 2018. I mean, the situation was terrible, especially because the government makes too much interventions in the economy. When I mentioned about the mistakes of the government, I mean, there were too many interventions in the economy from the government, trying to control prices, trying to control the exchange rate that was going crazy. I mean, the value of the bolivar the bolivar is the Venezuelan money, in front of the dollar, that have a big impact over inflation. So we went into hyperinflation, with inflations about, I don't know, in the worst year, I believe that we went above 1,000 percent of inflation in 1 year. Last year we had an inflation of, I believe that it was 600%, which is a lot still. And this year, the expectations is that the inflation goes below 100%, which is going to be a great success, especially coming from where we were 3 or 4 years ago. But it's still bad. But the government has been taking some measures to try to reduce the distortions in the economy, and has been taking another measures to bypass US and European sanctions. So right now, if you ask me in terms of economic reality, I mean, the situation is better. A lot of Venezuelans feels better right now, and with more positive approach towards the future. I mean, they have good expectations about what might happen in the coming months or years in terms of economy. a lot of people has been, because of the humongous crisis that we have been living through in recent years, a lot of people has been getting disconnected from politics. I'm not talking only about Chavistas. I'm talking about right wingers also. I mean, right wingers has been fed up uh, from their leadership, and they hate them. And some Chavistas also has been, detached from being hardcore Chavistas. But Chavismo is still there, very strong and very well organized, and that give us strength because we have to face a right wing movement that is there, that exists, but that is very extremely divided. So that makes things in political terms easy for us, because when we think about the presidential elections that are going to happen in 2024, we are a little bit less, more than 2 years away from our next presidential elections, that will give us I mean, we can foresee that we might be able to win a next presidential elections, at least under current circumstances. You never know what might happen tomorrow or after tomorrow, but under current circumstances, if you make Venezuelan go to a presidential election, Chavismo, and that means President Maduro will win. So that's to give you an idea of what is happening in Venezuela right now in economic and political terms. I don't know if that answered your question.
I think she's frozen
That's
for
true.
yeah.
Kitty,
So
you wanted to ask
She's still
something.
here.
Go ahead.
Hopefully she could still hear though.
Maybe.
Um,
Did you want to ask something,
Oh,
Kitty?
I was gonna ask something earlier about what we were talking about, but one thing I'm curious about, and I will admit I did not look up as much information about Venezuela as I wanted to beforehand. But how has the political climate and the economy impacted like higher education? Is there Are there a lot of students who go on to go and get like a 4-year degree to get a bachelor's or higher, or is it more of a have people been pushed to go straight into the workforce now? Like,
That's
I'm
a
not.
good question. That's a good question. I mean, the economic crisis that we have been experiencing harder, as I told you, in 2015, 2014, have have disarticulate, have create some disconnections between the different um, levels of the nation. I'm talking about the Venezuelan state, the Venezuelan nation, and that have created a migration crisis that you can read a lot in mainstream media, which is a reality, but is magnified by mainstream media to try to make promote the narrative that Venezuela needs a humanitarian intervention or something like that, which was the original idea of promoting that migration. Because I have to say it, I mean, the US, Canada, Europe, and a lot of Latin American countries promoted that migration. They invited Venezuelans to go to the places, and now they are expelling Venezuelans because they don't know how to handle the whole thing. So that's a reality that is happening. And that created that migration means professionals, workforce, bureaucrats, teachers, professors. I mean, a lot of people not finding the right economic environment in Venezuela, they decided to go abroad, to migrate, and that, going back to your question of in education, for example, but that affect all levels of Venezuelan society. But going to your question that refers to education, that affected also the education, the quality of the education. A lot of professors and teachers that were very well qualified and trained had to migrate, to go to other countries, to move abroad, and that affected the quality of the Venezuelan education that was very strongly promoted by by Chavez first, but also by President Maduro. But you cannot deal with those things in the middle of an economic crisis. So right now, but I believe that right now a lot of Venezuelans are coming back to Venezuela, and I have expectations that some of them might be those professionals or professors and teachers that might, come back and try to rebuild the educational system, and also that also is connected with the new reality of the virtual world and the virtual economy in which you can make a living without a degree, and a lot of people are thinking, at least that happened here in Venezuela a lot. I know that happened in other countries, but a lot of kids are realizing that they don't need a degree to make a living, that they can just have a good not profession, a good I don't know how to say it.
Good life.
No, I good something that make you
Like a
make an earn
trade or
a good
with
training, a
apprenticeship.
good
Yeah.
knowledge or something, and without a degree, and that's a trend that is out there, and also is affecting the quality of education because a lot of kids are not, are now thinking in making money in the internet or in the virtual world, and for that sometimes they don't need a degree. So that's part of the my answer to your questions, Kitty.
Okay, so I just spoke with Jesus. Jesus said thank you for being on the show. We're
Don't
down to
worry.
the last 2 minutes of the show, and she wanted to say thank you for coming on, and she will be happy to have you at your convenience. I would also like to thank the viewers who are viewing this show, and would like to thank you. Please like and subscribe Radical Books and Activists. We are planning more sessions, and we
But not
gotta
next week. Next week,
next week.
because of Father's Day, 2 out of 3 of us are dads, so we're taking the week off.
Right, right. I'm a father. Are you a
Wo-
father, Jesus?
yes, of two
All right.
already
So
grown ups.
what day is Father's Day over there?
We're gonna have it. We have it the same day as you in the U.S. next Sunday. So good Father's Day in advance for the three of you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so we're wishing you all a happy barbecue, a happy time with your fathers. If you didn't have one, just know you had an uncle or older brother or a mentor. Be thankful for that. I grew up with various types of father figures, but I'm really lucky because I am now a father, and I get to make clear decisions as I get older, getting better at fatherhood, getting better at it, and understanding what is a father to do in this economy, in this time of capitalism. What do you do to be a protector of your community, your family, and things like that? Is really trying to learn and understand. That's who I am in a nutshell. But I'd like to thank all the viewers, and we are ending so you guys can exit out, and we'll get in contact with you,
Un
Jesus.
abrazo.
Jesus will get in contact with you.
And
All right.
hopefully next time we'll get some
Un abrazo,
poetry
compas.
in. Let's all bring a poem next time. I know we wanted to try today. The Wi-Fi didn't work. Thank you so much for coming. We greatly enjoyed having you.
Okay,
Un
everybody.
abrazo, compas. Thank you for the
Un
invitation. Bye
abrazo.
bye.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye. All right.